And it's also different sequencing an album, putting like an album together is different to just presenting a song to someone. It's like
also the concept of the B-side has slightly disappeared.
yes, that's the sad part of it, because in the old days we'd have really good songs. We think, well, we'll use them as B-sides, so that it didn't, they weren't going to get lost. Whereas now you think, where's it going to go? It's like,
Super. Are we all happy?
We're ready to start. So when you
that's it. It's a wrap.
That's it. We're done. Everybody's
that was
everybody's phones on silent.
Everyone's,
Which he says to remind myself.
Should we say, do you want to say action?
Yeah, action.
Or just go?
If you could,
Yeah.
we good?
Yeah.
All good. If you could introduce yourself first, would be good.
Yeah, I'm Robert from TheCure. And
Let's start at the start. Let's start. When did you think you sort of officially started writing this album?
I was thinking about this a bit earlier. I think when the band first started out, and we were kind of doing the traditional route of album tour, and you did have this I had this strong idea of like, we now have to, we're going to write an album. It was just there. It's just what we did. I don't think there was really a kind of an official beginning to this album, because it's been kind of drifting in and out of my life for an awful long time. I mean, if I have one regret, it's that I said anything at all about it in 2019, because I really shouldn't have done, because we'd only just started creating it. I don't know, there are various points where I've thought, I think we're going to make a new album. And then it's kind of the idea, sort of like, for various reasons, other things have happened. And the idea's been sort of pushed back. So I'm not sure, but there have been definite points along the way where I thought, this, whether it be the first song, the key, I think, in the history of the band is, if I know what the opening song is, and I know what the closing song is, I think that's the album's halfway done. They're the two. That's the key for an album. So I can remember those two moments, and lyrically, I can remember a moment when I was thinking, this is going to be, we're definitely going to make a new album. But honestly, probably in 2016, 2017, I was preparing for the 40th anniversary of the band, and I thought a new album would be the way to do that. And life again kind of just like crashed down on me, and it never got done. And it's as things turned out, it was probably good that I didn't do it then, because the songs that we were going to record in 2017 are not the songs we ended up recording in 2019.
So tell me about that. How come?
Sorry, can I just interject? Just one thing, Robert. You're playing with your bracelet ever so slightly there, and so just try not to fidget quite so much the sound. Everybody does it.
Yeah, it's okay, honestly.
Do we want to run that question again?
No, a little bit of bracelet noise is fine, honestly.
That'll be all right. Yeah. So
that's the least of my worries. It's when I start wheezing.
Yeah. So what was it going to be then? Tell me about this moment that.
Well, I felt that we should be kind of summing up, and so I thought, well, we've got the 40th anniversary of the band happens in 2018, and the 40th anniversary of the first album was 2019. So I was thinking, we'll do something which kind of like sums up what the band is and where we've got to. And it was all, it was a grand plan, and grand plans generally don't work very well in my experience. So it wasn't really being done for the right reasons. It was kind of a bit triumphal, I suppose, looking back, and the tone of it was a bit sort of like, it was wrong. As it turned out, what happened in 2018 was a great way to mark the anniversary of the band, and allowed me the time to actually think about why we would be making a new album. And what happened in 2019 was much more natural, and it kind of everything evolved out of that. There was no longer this idea that we were kind of celebrating something or marking something. It was just like it was becoming something that was much more artistic, actually, to be honest, rather than something that was a part of this overall sort of idea of like, here's the Cure after 40 years, like, be amazed.
So the songs were all written over that period. There was no kind of much older songs.
Oh no, they're really old. I mean, the oldest song on this album is the demo was done in 2010. Actually, they stretched all the way through. The bulk of them, I would say, 5 of them probably have been written since 2017, but 3 of them are, one's 2010, one's 2011, I think, and one's about 2013 or 14. So there's so many songs to choose from that. I mean, this is jumping about, but I mean, we recorded 25, 26 songs, I think, in 2019. We recorded 3 albums in 2019. That's always been the problem, because I've been trying to get 3 albums completed, because my idea was like, after waiting this long, let's just like throw out Cure albums like that, every few months. It's everything with hindsight. You think, like, really, I could have done that a lot better, but it will work out this time, because having finished this one, it's sort of like, and the second one's virtually finished as well. The third one is a bit more difficult because, if we get that far after, I just like talking about the third album. See what I mean? I can't help myself.
Yeah, this is going to be one of my questions about like that kind of process. If there's like a whole spate of demos that get worked on simultaneously, or like specific songs get finished before you move to the next one, how does the kind of? But I guess it's everything.
Probably since the. In the early part of the band, so like the first 15 years of the band, the writing was pretty much, it was all me. I mean, it was just, and everyone, I was more like I conducted everyone. I showed them what they should be playing, and everyone interpreted it, and then I'd say no or yes, less often yes, and Simon would often join in, and he'd give, there's always a great Simon song on the early albums, sometimes more than one, to be honest, but really I was just writing, and that's sort of what I did. But in the latter half of the band's career, I have said to the others, if you've got something, play it to me, and like if I like it, we'll do it, And often some of the weird stuff that we do, it isn't me at all. It's like it's one of the others, because I think, well, that's really, I would never have written that. So I always write the words, but musically, sometimes Roger will come to me, or Perry, and say, I don't think it suits us, but what do you think? And I'll think, that's great. It's like, let's do, like some of the jazz songs and stuff on Wild Mood Swings, and it forces me to write lyrically write in a different way, sing in a different way, and the band, it becomes better for it. It expands in ways which I wouldn't have otherwise imagined. If it was entirely left down to me, I think we would be a much less interesting band. But when push comes to shove, I have to be able to write, I have to be able to sing it. We're not an instrumental band, so that's really, once it gets past that point and I've written something and I sing it, then so the process has opened up over the years. But with this particular album, there were songs that I'd written. They were all my demos, and I didn't, and everyone kind of understood that. We got together in 2017 and I talked through what I wanted to do. At that point, everyone was giving me stuff, and we had this, like I was saying earlier, this plan of. But by 2019, I had focused in on a group of songs that I'd written over the previous 10 years, and I thought this is actually what I want to focus on. I want, if we just get one album out of this, and then I'll engage with the others to do what they want. So we ended up in 2019 recording. All the songs we recorded were my songs, were my demos. So, which is really unusual. It hasn't happened for a very long time. So it's a strength in one way, because there is a sort of there's a cohesion to the songs which I think would otherwise not be there, which is really the thing that I most wanted about the album. I wanted it to feel like it was a thing. So some Cure albums have been thematically kind of, they're kind of put together in a certain way. Albums like Disintegration or Pornography, these albums and Blood Flowers, they have an atmosphere that, other Cure albums like the Kiss Me album or Wild Mood Swings are much more kind of like, scattergun, and like they're I prefer the ones that are thematically, that progress through and that have an atmosphere. I like us doing the other stuff, but I've just engaged more with the stuff that's got more of an emotional core, I think. So I wanted this album to be one of those kind of albums, and it helped that I was writing all the music as well as the words, because the cohesion was there anyway. So, but yeah, it's been a strange and protracted process, because from recording 2019, it's like here we are 5 years later, and like, and the first album comes out, first new album's out. It's slightly bewildering, if I'm honest, as to.
But there's this lovely thing where you're touring on the 22-23 shows, over 90 dates. You played 6 brand new songs.
Mm.
So those songs have sort of seeped into the audience's consciousness. I mean, did playing them live shape them?
Yeah, it has. That has been strange. We've done that a few times over the years, particularly in the early days. Funny enough, when we'd be writing songs as a band and playing them, and I'd be just having a couple of beers and going out on stage and just singing whatever came into my head. A lot of bands do that, whether they admit to it or not. And sometimes you think, I'd get them to record it out front, and I'd listen back and I think that's a really good line. Some of the songs from 17 Seconds were written like that. Some of the Faith songs were written like that. But as you become more popular and the audiences get bigger, you're less inclined to go out on stage and just like jabber into the mic. It takes more than a couple of beers. I'm not sure that I, playing the songs. We'd already recorded them, and I'd already sung the songs, so we knew what we were doing. So they were actually like within Cure World, the new songs were part of the repertoire, and that this is what we were going to play. And it was weird going out, because I thought, right, will I get better at this? Will the songs develop? Will they become something else? Having already done vocals actually so 5 of them are on the album of the 6 that we did, and of those 3 of them, I thought I won't get any better than that, because the vocals were very raw. They were written and sung, and they were kind of in a genuine emotional state. And I thought, but it's one of those strange things with songs. When you record a song, it becomes the defining version. And sometimes it's a bit of a millstone, because you record stuff in the studio and you've never. Often, in the early days, I'd be writing songs and then singing them first take, and that's it. And then you go out and like in a year later, you listen back and you think, really? It's like, it's awful. So this allowed me to sing, like night after night, these songs, and also more important, I think, to gauge the audience's reaction and to see how far I could push it, like emotionally, like vocally, and the band also, like, really grew into the songs. We were playing the songs a lot better than when we recorded them, I have to admit, and we did redo quite a bit of it. Simon, I think, replayed everything, actually, and Reeves, I spent a few more days with Reeves doing other things, because he was suddenly playing stuff on stage. Reeves is a kind of guitarist that, like, if he's got people in front of him, he plays in a totally different way than in the studio. He's just like much more expansive and reacts to the live environment. So capturing that was important. But as it turned out, at the end of it, I did after the European leg of the tour, I did re-sing everything at home. I did all the vocals at home, and I re-sang everything. And when we came to mix the album, I preferred the original vocals on all of them, because there's something about them that was very, like I said earlier, just raw. It just like I think I sang them better than some nights on tour, and I think some of the defining versions of those songs actually happened live, but it seemed wrong somehow to go back and meddle with what I'd already done. I don't know. It's the live versions are there, when we were bootlegged, the most bootleg band I think in history. But so all those versions are out there. So I thought this version, particularly of Alone, the opening song and end song, and I Can Never Say Goodbye, that those 3 songs in particular, I didn't, even though I felt like I was singing them better, whatever that means, after the tour, they didn't have that something that the original vocals that I did had. I don't know. So
it's a weird thing, is it? It's almost like after you've done it once, everything else is a cover version of the first version you've done, sort of.
It almost always is, which is why it's strange that we were able to have this option to play it like over and over and over, and then I still ended up like preferring the first version. I did change some of the songs, after the tour, weirdly enough, some of the songs that we didn't play, because I realised why we hadn't included all the songs into the repertoire, and I looked at the and the three other songs that are on the album were changed because of the 5 songs that we had been playing, and the 6th song that we did, it will be on the next one. So it's it's an interesting process. It's also strange that it's a new album, but Cure fans kind of know more than half the album, which is that's odd in itself.
That's quite cool. Yeah, as a side point, because you did the Royal Festival Hall in 2015 and played 2 songs that haven't made the record, but I presume they're going to be finding their home.
Yes, they're quite old then. I mean, I think we recorded them originally for the 413 Dream album, 2007, I think, 2008. We have since re-recorded those and a couple of others from that session, and some others from the Cure session before that, and actually a song from the Wish album sessions in '91. So yeah, I haven't been afraid of going back and using stuff that didn't seem to work at the time, and using what I know now to actually turn them into. Because sometimes if you've got, there's lots of things make a good song, and a melody is obviously pretty key, and for us as a band. And there are songs that have been left behind. I think it's such a great melody, it's such a good chord progression stuff, but I haven't managed to understand what the song is. I haven't been able to write for it, or I haven't been able to sing it, or it's the wrong tempo. Something about it just doesn't work. Hasn't fit at the time, doesn't fit with the other songs. So I spent some of lockdown, when I was actually focused a little bit on the fact that I was in a band, which I forgot for most of it, to revisit all these old, in fact, old cassette tapes and stuff, and transfer everything and listen to stuff, and came up with some, and I've been doing that with the remastering of all the old Cure albums. I've come across some things. So we went in and we re-recorded quite a few things. So the things we did at the 2 songs there were part of that as well. We've re-recorded those. One of them we've been playing live quite a lot, actually. It Can Never Be the Same, which was called Christmas Without You when we first did it. And it goes down really well. It's a really, it's a lovely song to play, and it's a powerful song to sing. So that will be out probably on the next one. This is like Oasis, isn't it? Like the next album, when they talk about it, like the next album's much better than this one. So there's a big pool of songs, but as I was saying before that we started filming, I was imagining this album, Songs of a Lost World, was going to be very much, everything was going to be relentlessly downbeat. That was sort of my idea for the album. And a few people who I trust listened to it and said, that the songs individually are really, really good, but it's too much. We can't, you can't expect people to listen to this much doom and gloom. It just doesn't work. You need something else in there. So a couple of the songs which I really do love were kind of like knocked off, and a couple of songs brought in which I didn't think would work at all. And I actually started and streamlined the whole thing. It was originally 13 songs, and now it's like 8, and it's a much better record for it, because it has a bit of light and dark, and it's I mean, most people that have heard it up to this point want to hear it again. That's the first time in a long time that anyone said that about a Cure album, because they've been too long. It's like our shows. It's like it took me to doing a 4-hour plus show to suddenly realise that we were probably playing for too long. It just takes me a little bit longer to realise than the people around me.
What was the track or was there a track that you finished that kind of unlocked the record, that kind of like when you had it down, you're like, okay, now I feel like I know maybe the identity of the whole record, because this song has kind of pointed the way, unlocked the door.
Yeah, as I said earlier, the opening and closing songs, those 2 songs, they're always key, and every Cure album, they're always the key to the album. And I remember I rediscovered a poem by Ernest Dowson, an English poet, who it's called Dregs. And I've got a book, and I jot down, over the years, things that I think that's interesting. Like, it's not, some of it's just like couplets, some of it's like rhymes, some of it's words that I don't look this word up. It's just a general sort of it's not a journal. It's a lot of it's gobbledygook. You know, it's not. It travels with me, and there's more than one book actually, to be honest. And you know, I'm outside in the dark actually, like, and you know, scribbling in it. Most of it's illegible, to be honest, and a lot of it's just junk. But occasionally I'll turn a page and there'll be something, and I think, oh, that's great. And I'd actually transcribed this poem. I don't know when, and I was struggling to find the right imagery for the opening song, for Alone, and I had some of the stuff in it, and I kind of knew what I wanted, and this poem, the opening line, I thought that's it, you know. So I didn't nick it. I was inspired by it. I mean, it just the idea of because it was in the back of my mind. I was thinking, I've read this somewhere that every song we sing, like we're alone, however much we, you know, ultimately we're alone, and but however I was writing it, it wasn't poetic, and suddenly I discovered this. I thought, that's it. That's what's been bugging me. So that was a moment when I suddenly, because I knew what the song was supposed to be about. And End Song, I wrote it just in one night, and it was actually in 2019, because the album, the sessions were called Live from the Moon. It was actually called Live from the Moon. Transmission 1 was the first session, Transmission 2 was the second session. It was because it was the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11, the lunar landings. And I was actually outside, and I was remembering back to, you know, I think I was 10 years old, and I was in the back garden with my dad, and I was like, I remembered, you know, the feeling of like, really, you know, I didn't believe it. I didn't actually believe there was a man on the moon, but and I thought, here I am, still stargazing, you know, and I'm still kind of like, I do believe man walked on the moon. I'm not, so I don't think it was done in a studio next door. But just the idea of how the world seemed to stall at that moment in a strange way. You know, I kind of grew up like in the glorious 30 years from like the end of the Second World War. Obviously I wasn't born until 59, but the world that I was born into was getting incrementally better every year. It just seemed that the world was on an upward trajectory, and the moon landing was part of that. And around that time, I turned 16 in 75, and it seemed like the world sort of like stalled, and then it's been travelling downhill ever since. And I mean, that's the core, that's the beating heart of the album, of the Songs of a Lost World. That is the Lost World. And I realised when I wrote that, you know, I just wrote that in one go outside, but like, this is how I feel about, you know, the young me. Where did it go, sort of thing. And it's at that moment, I thought, well, that's the end song. I've got the end song. I've got the opening song. You know, so it was. I think that those two moments put together, and both happened in 2019. I sort of knew that, you know, which is probably why I started blathering about the album to people. We've got a new album. We've got a new album. When in fact we had like 26 pieces of music and 2 songs. So I was being slightly disingenuous, but I did it in good faith. I thought it might motivate me to kind of, you know, once it's like when you make a promise in public, it becomes more difficult to break it. And I thought, well, you know, as it turns out, I've eventually, you know, finally got there, but it's just taken a lot longer for various reasons.
Yeah, we were talking about lockdown. How did that impact you and impact the record, or did it just serve as did it derail things? I don't know. How was it for you?
Yeah, it's strange. Again, with hindsight, I feel I could have utilised lockdown. I could have finished everything, really. You know, it was like 18 months pretty much over a 2-year period where very little went on. You know, we couldn't do anything. You know, a lot of the time you couldn't see anyone. You couldn't leave your home. I was in a very privileged position where I've got enough room at home for me to think like, well, I'm not crowded on top of other people, and it's and we live in a reasonably remote area, so it wasn't too fussed about you know, walking out the gate. I didn't think I was going to be immediately arrested. I wasn't doing a Boris Johnson, but you know, and in fact, after a while, because I was in a privileged position, I actually relished certain aspects of lockdown. I loved the fact there were no planes in the sky. It was fucking great, and the birds were singing a lot more. I mean, everything was sort of reverting back again into this, like, it felt like an old world. You know, it's like I've never had a smartphone, and there's only one thing in the house that connects to the internet, and if the lid's shut, the house is like, you know, we're disconnected. We're not off the grid, but I was oblivious to it, like, so much, and I actually really loved it. You know, I said to you earlier, like, there's a part of me that really actually enjoys solitude. It's a strange occupation for someone who enjoys solitude, because a lot of it is actually, so I liked the idea of not having to do it. I didn't get dressed very often. For some weeks I was just wandering around. I did a few things. I think in the first lockdown, which ended up being called barefoot sessions. I did some stuff from home of just playing some old songs, and I didn't even realise that I wasn't dressed. I mean, it was actually quite a shock, in a funny way. I thought, because it went out online, and people were saying, he's not wearing any shoes or socks. And I thought, am I not? And that was like it. That was the thing. Oh, he's got feet. So yeah, it changed me. I almost took a step outside of myself as well, thinking about it, because I did a lot of things that were nothing to do with what I do. As I don't really have a normal life, I suppose. But I kind of stepped out of me through lockdown, and I did stuff. I read all of John le Carré's books, the whole oeuvre, in one go. Stuff like that. I thought, I never thought I'd have time to do any of these things. I read War and Peace, I never honestly thought I would. Everyone says they're going to read War and Peace. I read it. It's like,
what's it like? Is it any good?
I think it's one of those books. I realised that big famous books like that, you've invested so much time and effort into getting to the end that you have to say it's good. I mean, honestly, it's well written. Is me going to critique War and Peace? This is going to be great. I didn't enjoy it that much, actually, to be honest. I didn't, because I wasn't really very sympathetic to any of the characters in it. I didn't really see the point. It's very of its time. It's very mannered. It's like a lot of historical literature where you just think, oh, for fuck's sake, just say something, because it's all to do with social mores, and it's very hard to sort of take them seriously. Like with a lot of that kind of literature, you just speak up, man. It's like. And then I embarked on reading, on the back of this stuff. I was reading a lot of books that meant a lot to me when I was younger, to see if they had the same resonance. So I read an awful, probably 100+ books in the first year of lockdown. That's all I did. I listened to vast amounts of music. I just had, I thought, right, and it was almost like an extended holiday. The dark side of it, meanwhile, all my remaining aunts and uncles died. In care homes, and my cousins. Everyone that I knew was kind of dealing with this sort of awful reality of not being able to. My mum and dad had already died, and so I didn't have to go through that. I think I would have had a completely different experience if I had seen them in the situations that many of the people that I know were not able to go and engage with their own families. I mean, it was really awful. After the event, when I sort of talked to people, it dawned on me the reality of lockdown for most people wasn't a good thing. I didn't think it was a good thing because people would die. I was aware of it, but just on a personal level, for me, it was just about quiet and solitude. It was a very, very selfish lockdown, if you like. It was which is sort of the spirit of lockdown in a way. I was relieved it came to an end. Fucking hell, I did grow tired of it, I must admit. Doing the thing that I did with the churches in particular, and we did the thing with gorillas, and it was like the first time I'd been out, for months, and it was really weird how desocialised everyone was. It's like the mask covered up this fact that behind the mask you're kind of gurning because you weren't quite sure how to compose your face in front of other people. It was very, very odd. It took quite a while actually to get back into some semblance of normality. All this sort of even now people stand slightly further apart than they used to, and there's this very slight hesitation in shaking people's hands and stuff. There's all minimal things, but it was an enormous thing looking back, and as you were saying earlier, it seems to have almost it's a mass forgetting of what it really was. And I always think of it in my own mind when I'm trying to piece together from 2019 through to now. It's all it's kind of quite blurry, smeared sort of memories of what happened then. The only defining thing for me is actually I got shingles on my face at one point, and I got it because the bloke who treated me said, it's chicken pox basically, and I had it as a kid, and the virus stays in you, and it's most of the times it's triggered by stress, and he's saying, are you stressed? I thought, I'm actually not. I feel more relaxed than I've felt in like 20 odd years. And he said, "Oh, have you been out in the sun a lot?" And I said, "Yeah, I have been out in the sun much more than I normally would." And he said, "It's that sunlight can trigger shingles." And I thought, "Oh." So yeah, I had all this, like my entire face looked like Elephant Man for a brief period of like pustulating sores and things. So that was I can remember that there's a before shingles and after for me. So it's because it fucking hurt as well.
So the album Songs of Lost World, I mean, it deals with some dark themes, and you've talked about experiencing loss during the creation of the record. I mean, how was it going through those experiences and then putting that down, capturing that?
Yeah, it's one of the things. I mean, our songs have always had that element of you know, a fear of mortality, I suppose, for want of a better way of putting it. It's always been there ever since I was young. I mean, I've kind of wrestled with it since I was like 8 years old, I think. But as you get older, it becomes more real, and all of us, you know, the circle of people, the band, and most of the people that I kind of like know socially, we're all growing older at the same rate, give or take, and death and dying becomes more every day, unfortunately, and it's something you. So when you're younger, it's you romanticise it even without knowing it. You romanticise it all, and and then it starts happening to people like, you know, your immediate family and friends, and suddenly it's a different thing, and it was that really, and it's something that I struggled with. Lyrically, was to how to put this into the songs, because I feel like I am a different person than I was when we last made an album, you know. I wanted that to come through. I think I'm yeah, and I struggled a lot with the right tone of like I Can Never Say Goodbye was about my brother dying, and it was trying to achieve the right balance between like the outpouring that I had after the event, and just trying to take the right part of that and put it into a song. You know, some of the versions of that I did were so overwrought. You know, I thought they were great, and then I'd play them to and they'd like, you know, you can't. It's too much. You can't do that. It's like, and I realised I couldn't. Doing that song live, sometimes it would actually, there was the ones it would really kind of break me up, and it was very difficult to not go over the top. But yeah, I mean that was been true for me trying to write the words to all of the new songs, is just trying to have the right sort of tone and trying to reflect the fact. I mean, I don't feel my age at all, but I'm aware of you know, I turned 65 this year. It's like, for fuck's sake, I'm 65. It's like I want to be aware of that. I want to reflect that in the songs. I want to reflect the fact that I am where I am, and that the things that matter to me now aren't the things that mattered to me like 20 years ago. And it's yeah, and so in some way it constrains me. It has constrained, but I think in a good way. I think it stopped me from straying too far from, you know. I want the songs to mean something, I suppose is what I'm saying. Whereas in the past I wasn't really that bothered. There have been big periods of the Cure's history where some of the songs mattered and some of them didn't. On this album they all matter, you know. So it's because I realise I haven't got that many more albums, although I've got another 2 coming after this one. Not that many more.
How did it change you doing this record? Because like, we're not the same person going into a record as we are coming out of a record, or any kind of artistic endeavour. It's by dint of doing it, it changes you. How did this record change you?
It does, but it's very, because of the way that it's been done, it's kind of incremental, and so I think that it's more. I was ready to make the record before we made it. Whereas often, I know what you mean, often in the past there's something, and particularly if you make an album, then you go and tour it, at the end of that period, that's how I define my adult life, is by albums and tours, you know. I mean, in some ways it's great, because I can actually place things, you know. There's lots of photographs and stuff, and I can place where I was, what I was doing, who I was, you know, by songs. It's strange. Even when I'm on stage and I'm singing songs live, it takes me back, you know, for that 3 or 4 minutes. I can go back to where I was when I did the song. It's an odd sensation. I think with this album, I was kind of ready. I felt like I'd already made it in a funny way. It just came out of me because I was already there, you know. So the change had happened to me, I think, between the last, that was the 10 years that we'd spent as a band kind of like playing. That's the period that I changed through. I think we got to 2019. I think I pinned so much on 2018 as an anniversary year. But I think once it was gone, it was that changed me. I was sort of like, it's all behind me. And I thought every moment from this point on is pretty much a bonus, you know, because I thought that the Hyde Park show would be it. I thought that was the end of TheCure.
Really?
I went into it thinking that's, you know, I didn't plan it, but I had a sneaky feeling that this was going to be it. And it was only because it was such a great day and such a great response, and I enjoyed it so much. And like, we suddenly got a flood of offers to headline every European festival, you know, every major festival. Glastonbury came. Do you want to play Glastonbury? Like, you know, I thought, well, maybe it's not the right time to stop. But I wasn't stopping because I was sort of like thought I don't want to do it anymore. I just thought it'd be a nice time to stop, and it allows me a few years while I'm still kind of like, you know, able to do something else. I can go and do something else, and really. I wasn't that bothered, funny enough. I thought that's it. I've kind of, because I'd arranged everything to end in 2018. So when we got to 2019, I sort of felt really relieved. Thought, it's like we did it. So I've had a very different outlook to everything actually since 2019. I see the world in, you know, and because everyone that died, pretty much everyone that died that meant something to me died prior to 2019. I felt like this, you know, I've got to make the most of this. It's like, you know,
So it's kind of like the freedom of splitting up, but then not actually having to split up.
Yeah, in a strange way. I mean, 2019 was the culmination of all that. We had a fantastic year playing festivals, and then because then I started to work on the songs, and I knew that we needed to expand the band in order to do justice to them live. Perry came back into the band, and since then, you know, that's like another kind of version of TheCure has gone out and played stuff. So, yeah, I mean, it's a strange sort of sense of us evolving or just changing, but very slowly. It's not really like we've made the album. It's like you know, it's just gradually sort of like turning into something else all the time. So when we next play, it will become something else again. You know, so I look forward to it. It's a blessing because I find it very hard to live in the moment. I think that's another thing about lockdown that I enjoyed. I actually found myself spending the day just not thinking about anything to do with tomorrow. It was like very unusual for me because I'm normally kind of always thinking ahead to like what comes next. And I've fallen back into that way of thinking. Unfortunately, I haven't managed to retain the lockdown sort of like you know, today's the only day that there's ever been sort of thing. Which is what one of the songs was about, was like trying to retain that sense of self, just existing in this moment, not yesterday and not tomorrow, but now.
Tell me a bit about...
That was a rambling answer. That's why we needed 2 hours, isn't it?
Tell me a bit about the artwork. Tell me a bit about the sculpture, where that comes from and why that was chosen.
This is an Ur story. Actually, I don't have many of these, but I was given a book, this particular book of Slovenian sculpture, and it was a signed book by one of the sculptors in it, Janez Pirnat, his name, and this was like in January 21, and I was doing all this. I was clearing stuff out, and I came across this book, and I thought, I've never even opened this book. So it's just full of photographic plates of sculptures, and I was leafing through it, and I saw this photo of this head. It was kind of like it's sculpted. It's emerging from rock, or it's embedded in rock, or it's a kind of a. And there's something about it. I thought that's it. That's the album cover. I don't know why. It just like struck me. I thought it's like it's things like that just sort of happen. You think that's it. You know, that's the image I want. I don't know why. And so I thought I better find out if he'll let me use it. So I opened the lid up. I went online. I looked him up, and he died that day. Janez Pirnat had actually died the day I looked at it. And I don't normally buy into this. You know, like it was meant to be. But it was a very strange coincidence, which cemented the idea in my mind. I thought that is it, you know, that this has got to be the album cover. So I got in touch with his widow eventually, and actually ended up with the sculpture itself. I now have the sculpture at home, which is it's fantastic sculpture. So yeah, it was just that was it. There was no other, you know, I didn't know anything about it. It arrived that day, and that was it. It just, yeah. I don't know. And yet, people that see it and hear the few people that have seen it and hear and have heard the album think it works as well. There's a connection. I think it's because it's the Lost World. It just looks like something. It's obviously taken a lot of, it's done by hand, obviously, and it's taken a lot of work, a lot of care, a lot of thought, and it's just it's a beautiful object, and it's just I don't know, just resonates with me. I don't know.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's kind of Jacob Epstein-y kind of thing. It's really,
Yeah,
it works. Cure album artwork usually includes a few lines by a famous poet.
yeah.
This time the words from a Keats poem. When I have fears that I may cease to be.
Yeah. Why? Why do I do that? To put me in my place in case I'm getting too grand ideas of where I stand in the scheme of things. I don't, I was thinking about this as well, but I don't really enjoy a lot of poetry. I'm not the kind of person I'll settle back and read a book of poetry. I find most poetry really tedious. But when I come across something that works, I've always been really intrigued by how a great piece of poetry can make you feel something, and you can't put your finger on it. That's, for me, is the mark of a great poem. It's like you don't really know why you're reacting the way you're reacting. It's like great music. It's exactly the same emotional response, and I'm always striving to do that with with one line or a series of lines, just to try and get that kind of emotional response from in a song. It's a slightly different thing because you're trying to marry words and music, and you're trying to create a whole when you're writing words to a song. It's not really like writing poetry, but there is an element of poetry to the best lyric writing. It's a blurred boundary between the two, and it's again going back to my notebooks full of junk. It's just there's lots of fragments of poems that have really moved me over the years, and generally they're the ones that end up on Cure album covers. I'll think, I know what this reminds me of, and it'll be, I think we used a Tennyson one on the last album, and I think the words was before that. So they're traditional, they're English poets in the main, and I don't sort of like sit, I'm not sitting there reading in poetry by candlelight. I wish I was sometimes, but no. I like the fact that it can conjure up an emotion. I think with that set of lines, it's sort of the breath before you start listening to the album. It kind of sets you up, and you read that, and then you start listening to the album. It kind of puts you in the right frame of mind. I suppose that's why I do it.
When it was done, when it was sequenced and mixed and mastered, and you sat down and you thought, and you listened to it, and you were able to kind of, final brush strokes, I'm going to step away from the painting now. I'm not going to put any more on it or take any more away, and this is it, and you listen to it. Tell me about, because that's the big, it's kind of letting go. Tell me about,
yes.
How did it feel?
That was actually here. That was in Abbey Road. It was in the because the final part of it was doing the Atmos mix, the big surround mix, and I did that here over a couple of days. And that was the very last part of it. And because it was after that, you can't really change anything. I had been changing things. The vinyl mixes are ever so slightly different to the digital and the CD mixes. I was still going home and changing stuff because I mixed it at home. So, but when I came here, it was the final part of it was the Atmos, and I'd had to pay really close attention to everything in the songs. And I hadn't really done that from when we were recording them. It's different. You're kind of almost putting it all apart to see which bit goes where, and if you really want it to go anywhere, or if you want it all to stay down the front, or like. And it was actually sitting here, and I sat on my own and listened when we'd done it, and listened. I listened back to it, and in the middle, and it was that moment I thought, it's done, A mixture of enormous relief at having actually finished it. And also, I really like it. I think it's a really good album. I mean, I'm going to sound like Oasis. It's not as good as the next one. But no, I'm pleased that my original ideas for what it was going to be. I'm glad that I was flexible enough to change that kind of midstream and to turn it into something which it's a much more engaging piece of work. I think it's sequenced in such a way that I think it kind of takes you somewhere. You end up at it's just about 50 minutes long, and I think you end up somewhere different than where you started out. And hopefully you know, people will react to it. The few people that have heard it so far have, which it's very gratifying having spent the time with it that I have, to suddenly let other people listen to it. You know, it's a strange thing. It's always a weird moment when suddenly people start listening to what you've been doing, because you can't help but like. I mean, why bother unless you want people to like it? You know, I hate people that say it's a kind of faux artistry when you think I'm just doing it for myself. I mean, you're really not. You don't make records for yourself. It's like you can sit at home and strum an acoustic guitar and sing it for yourself, but you don't bother going through all this and like making an album unless you want people to really like it. And so yeah, I think it's turned out really well. It's great.
When can we expect to see TheCure on stage then? I presume the intention is to take it out.
Yeah, I mean, we'll be playing. I think we'll be playing an album show this year, but yeah, we'll start up again next year. I mean, I still have to. I mean, seriously, I have to finish the second album. So we were going to play festivals next year, but a couple of weeks ago, I decided that we wouldn't play anything next summer. So the next time we go out on stage will be autumn next year. But then we'll probably be playing quite regularly through until the next anniversary. The 2028 anniversary, which is just like looming on the horizon. The 2018 one, I started to think about late 2016. I thought, I've got a year and a half. It's easy, and I still didn't manage to get there in time. So now I'm starting to think, right, 2028, I must start to get things in order. So the documentary film and various other things like that. So I am actually now thinking about 2028 as being. I'm 70 in 2029, and that's like the 50th anniversary of the first Cure album, and that's it. That really is it. If I make it that far, that's it. So in the intervening time, I'd like us to you know, I would like to include playing concerts as part of the overall plan of what we're going to do, because I've loved it. The last 10 years of playing shows have been the best 10 years of being in the band. I've absolutely, you know, it pisses all over the other 30 odd years. It's been great.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's for not having a new album, you know, for all that period of time, from, you know, and Reeves joining the band, and actually the makeup of the band, being allowed, you know, allowing us to actually, we've played, I don't know, 130, 140 different songs. Because we've just turned into like a live band that draws on the catalogue. So we can go out and play shows, and we can play 2 nights of 3 hours and play completely different songs both nights. You know, there's a freedom about it, which any band, you know, I mean, if you've got a good catalogue, you can do it. But the pressures are always there. This insidious sort of pressure to, you know. And 2008, when we did the last album, we were out of contract for the first time since the first album. We didn't have a record label. And I didn't sign this to anyone. So for 10 years, I could wake up in the morning and think, this is what I'm going to do. And I didn't have to consult with anyone. I'd just tell the others, this is what we're going to do. And we'd do it. So there was an enormous freedom and great joy, actually, in just going out and playing music. And not that I'd forgotten it. I don't think I'd ever had it like I had. I'm going to take it for granted. And I think Meltdown made me realise that I shouldn't really take it for granted.
Okay.
Am I back in the right place?
Yeah, looks like
Sort of.
Technically,
you can forward a little.
Yeah.
Sorry, could just that's it.
Cool.
Thank you.
Okay. I mean, you touched on this before, but over the past decade, you've mentioned all these different projects. There's 1406 Dream, Live in Paris, South American tour film, Cure documentary, Tim Pope. Any of these things looking like they're going to happen?
They all stall for different reasons. Most of them will get completed. The South American tour film that we made, we took Tim with us to South America. I mean, it was utter chaos, and some of the footage is really funny, and the shows were good. But there didn't seem any point to it. I sort of started watching it all back, and I thought, why would we make a film about this? It didn't, but it's there, you know. And similarly, 2008, we actually did finish a film that we made in Paris of the band, but that was probably the worst, the most acrimonious disintegration of any versions of The Cure, and I really couldn't be bothered. You know, it just needed tweaking and finishing off and mix the final mix and stuff, and I just couldn't be bothered. And then we moved on, and I've never really gone back to it, which is a shame, because I suppose as time has kind of softened my anger, and it will probably emerge at some point, I suppose. Maybe after I've died, I don't know. But and the Tim Pope, the documentary thing with Tim Pope, that will definitely happen. Yeah, that's like an ongoing thing. It's the preliminary stuff, all the digitising and all that, and once we do it, it will be done really quick. But I mean, essentially, it's my perspective on everything that I've done with the band. So I've been hanging fire really, while everyone else makes their version of events public. I've just waited, and so it's just seems so for me that if I do get to the 50th anniversary, that will be the summing up of really essentially what I've done with my life, I suppose. But things that I don't normally talk about and stuff that footage and recordings and things that wouldn't otherwise see the light of day. So if you're interested in the band, it will be interesting. It's a historical kind of piece. It's not really it's not going to be salacious in any way, but it will be revealing. Again, because we're in Abbey Road, I love the thing like the Beatles thing. But lots of people found it way too long. I found it's great. I wished it was like another 10 hours. It's like so you either like that kind of thing, or you don't. So the thing I'm doing with Tim is more kind of that. It's more like an overview for me of what it was like to be in the band, rather than here's what we did. It's like, this is what it meant. Is that the perspective is slightly different. So, I mean, I'm enjoying the preliminary stuff. I'm enjoying like digging through stuff and realising what was important to me and what wasn't. And what I thought was important and what really isn't. So yeah, I mean that'll definitely get done. There are a lot of outstanding projects, and I sometimes I've actually got like lots of shelves with like labels on it, like and post-it notes. Get this done, and it's like, oh, really,
So, like in terms of other stuff you've done in recent years, you've worked with Churches, Gorillaz, covered the Twilight Sad remix, Noel Gallagher. Like, tell me a bit about what you get out of that collaboration process, working with different people like that.
They're quite random. I mean, I get a reasonable number of requests through in an average year to do things, get involved with producing or whatever. Sometimes I do things like not publicly, and just like I'll comment on if it's like a younger artist, younger band, and like what I offer an opinion for what is but actually collaborating and getting involved, in something which is going to be for public consumption, it's very I don't know if there's any good reason. I just sort of think that would be good. There's no. I don't have a manager. We don't have management, and we haven't had, like I say, we haven't had a label. So something just to, it appeals to me. I did the thing with Chino from the Deftones like recently, and it's just because he just sent me the track, said, fancy like if you can sing what you want. I thought it's great. I loved it. I'm kind of picky in what I do or I don't do, but I think that if I'm sent something and I like it, then I just do it. I don't really think, will this further their career or mine? I just think this will be really, I was surprised, when Damon asked me to do Gorillaz, I was genuinely surprised that they asked me. But it was great, I hadn't spoken to him for, I don't even know how long. And it was just really nice to be part of that for a brief period. It was a really enjoyable experience. And similarly, like being asked to remix one of Noel's songs, I didn't know he was a Cure fan. I'd seen him, we've bumped into him over the years at festivals and stuff, and the crew always said to me, Noel Gallagher was watching him on the side. So it's like, well, where else are you going to go on a festival, like with a headline band? Everyone ends up on the side of the stage. But yeah, so that was a nice surprise. And I probably should have done more, if I'm honest. I should probably have used my time, But often I think really, once I get involved with it, I think I really want it to be great. And I'm not always sure that I can bring to someone else's project what they think I'm going to bring. So I often just decline because there is a part of me that worries that it's not going to be like they want it to be. It's not going to be as good as they think it's going to be. And so I think it's better just to remain like shadowy figure. And it could have been great, but So.
Have you got any more collaborations planned, or any more kind of work?
I do actually have one coming up. Yeah, I won't say what it is because they want it to be a surprise. But yeah, there is one in the offing. But now I'm more immersed in this back into Cure world as well. So, but yeah, I like them. It just makes me step into someone else's world. That's how I feel. It's like I'm drawn into someone else's sphere, and it's like it's just nice engaging with people who do what I do and just see how they do it. It's kind of it's interesting, and generally people they're everyone's really nice, and it's a good experience. Like often I turn things down, and then afterwards I think, why did I say no? That's the downside to it. But
were there any when you were like look back and you were genuinely like that? I should have done that one.
No, because at the time when I've turned things down, with hindsight, always with hindsight, you think, oh, it could have made that work. But at the time, I knew that it wasn't the right thing to do. A lot of these things, if you don't have a label and management, you're entirely working on instinct. You just kind of think like, or whether you think you'll enjoy it or not. And sometimes I suppose I've second guessed myself, and then I think I probably could have made it work. Probably would have been good fun if I'd just But at the time, you think, ooh, there is a sort of element of self-doubt that creeps in, particularly when you're being asked to do something with someone who you know is really, really good. And you think, I'm actually not as good as you think I am. I'm not fishing for, it's a genuine concern. When I started singing and I first stepped on stage, I never thought I would sing. I sang like one song because I just wanted to see what it was like at the very first show we did, and I hated it. And I became the singer by default because we went through a number of singers who were all absolutely, really dreadful. And I thought, well, I'll do it until we can find someone, because I didn't want to not play. I just thought, unless we start playing, we've got to play to people. So I became the singer, and then I just ended up being the singer. And it's always, it's intrigued me because it made me start to think about how I could be better as a singer and how I should present myself and all that sort of stuff. But also, you can't make people like you. You can't make people like your voice. It's one of those weird things and I was thinking, whether it's, sometimes you fall in love with someone's voice when they're singing. You don't know anything about them. You can hear a voice and think, God, that's fantastic. I love that voice. For me, it's like hearing Nick Drake when I was about 10 years old. I didn't know anything about Nick Drake. My brother played this album, and I thought, I didn't think, what a great voice. There was something about it. I was like absolutely entranced by it. And all through my life, I've wondered about what the marriage between when you know someone, you know something about them, whether you're projecting something onto an artist when you listen to them, or whether you genuinely know who that person is, or you think you know who they are, and so you're listening. So it doesn't really matter. Some people do really well, and they've got terrible voices. Some singers have got awful, in my opinion, really fucking awful voices, but they're great, and I love them. Other people are technically brilliant, and I fucking hate them. So there's something about the human voice that's like, it's not like any other instrument, and it's a thing that's always kind of I think about from time to time. It's like why I've ended up being able to sing to people when I don't. And again, I'm not being funny. I'm a very I can sing in a certain way, but that's kind of it. I haven't got a particularly a voice that people go, oh my, that's he's got a 5-octave range. But there's something about it that draws people in. I'm able to emotionally connect when I sing with people, and it's like if I wasn't able to do that, I wouldn't be doing it. I wouldn't be able to be doing it. So many people I know who have tried to, who are really otherwise great, are the great musicians. They step in front of a mic and start to sing, and you think, oh no, don't, and yet they can hold the note, they can pitch, they can breathe. It's one of those strange things. It's that I've been very lucky in that, because if people didn't kind of engage with me as a singer, we wouldn't really I wouldn't have had much of a career, to be honest, because I don't practice guitar enough to be a guitarist. So.
Questions from different areas now. Do you still follow QPR? Do you still follow Queen's Park Rangers?
I fell out of love with football about 10 years ago.
How come?
I don't know. I don't know. Lots of silly little reasons. It just each season's become more and more predictable, more tedious. I don't support anyone else. I don't really bother with football anymore. I mean, I met Stan Bowles. He was doing sort of meet and greet at Rangers. The last time I went to a football match, I went out for a curry with him, which was one of the highlight of my life because he was my idol when I was a kid. But no, I don't know. I mean, football was it was different, I suppose. I fell in love with football when it was a completely different thing. I suppose it sounds like it's really curmudgeonly, isn't it? But it was just it was more. It was about other stuff, I think. I mean, going to football matches in the 70s was it was a bit of a rite of passage, really, and it was a different experience entirely. And the footballers themselves were funnier, They were in the pub before the game at QPR. I mean, it was a different world. It's just very corporate. It strikes me football's just all about it's about I'd say it's hair and tattoos, but it's just about selling stuff. Everything is about like branding and about sponsorship and betting. It just doesn't move me like it used to, I suppose. I still watch the Euros and the World Cup and that. I hosted a Euros final night. I watched England. I watched every game. I watched them stumble into the final. I was the only person drinking Spanish beer at the final, and I was the only one smiling at the end as well. Yeah. So at heart, I am still a football fan because Spain were the best team in the competition. They should have won the competition. They won the competition. I was happy. I've fallen out of love with international football for the same reason that I've fallen out of love with a lot of international sport, because you either buy into the idea that it's my country against your country, or you don't. And if you do, it's my country against your country. It's kind of like inherently stupid. I appreciate that. I mean, and it flies in the face of everything I believe in, that we're all on the same planet. But if there are members of a national team that have barely even been to the country they're playing for, it makes it it goes into the absurd. And so I've really fallen out of love with international football, because I think it's really the latest game that was on. I think he actually had the gall. The commentators they used to be Irish, but now they're English, and I think this is really quite surreal. I've had so many arguments over the years about how you should qualify for an international team. And looking back, they were quite funny. Always drunken and always well, what about if you're born in international waters? It's one of those sort of arguments.
Something I wanted to ask you about. So during the North American leg of the Shows of Loft World tour, you were very vocal about giving fans a really fair deal on tickets and merchandise. I guess that's something that's always been really important to you, that kind of cause.
Yeah, keeping control over prices has always has played a part ever since we moved away from Fiction, which had been our label since the beginning, in 2000 with the Bloodflowers album. That was the last album we did with them, and up to then we'd always had a support structure of an independent label attached to affiliated with what's now the Universal Group. And I used to leave a lot of it, I used to delegate and just say, come to me with the headline stuff, and I'm not going to. But after that, I started to get more involved. I also realised that I didn't know as much as I should know about what the industry that I was in and the wider world that it existed in, and so I started to learn about how it all how it worked, and I was shocked actually at how much profit is made on everything. It's absolutely astonishing. So I thought, well, we don't need to make all this money on everything. Everything doesn't have to make this much money. It was a really simple and that it drove us through with everything. And all my fights through the ensuing 10 years with the label was always about how we could price things lower. Because I always thought, well, we have longevity if we're good enough, and if we're good enough, that's up to me. And if we haven't got longevity, why would I? That's the only reason why you'd be charging more, because you're worried that it's the last time you're going to be able to sell a T-shirt. It's like if you have the self-belief that you're still going to be here in a year's time, you want the show to be great because you want those people to come back. You don't want to charge 10 times as much, or charge as much as the market will let you, because you can squeeze everyone. It sits really, it doesn't sit well with me at all. And so it reached a point now I'm pretty much doing everything myself, because I know, it's easier for me to just to say yes or no because I know how it all works. I say like, don't be ridiculous. Like I know how much it costs to do that. We're not charging that. So it was very easy just to set ticket prices. It's still a battle. I mean, you still have to spend an awful lot of time because the other side will try and wear you down. They have teams of people telling you why your idea is a bad idea. So you have to kind of be very, be quite resilient, pig-headed. There are people who would say that, and I also realised that I'm like with the Ticketmaster thing that happened in on the American tour on that leg. It wasn't really about Ticketmaster. I mean, it's the system. You take a step back. You're working in a capitalist system. I know it's but it's essentially that. Ticketmaster have shareholders, and they're legally obliged to make as much money as they can. If they don't, they'll go. They won't end up in shareholders. No one ever does. But that's what they're there for. If it wasn't them, it would be someone else. That's the way the system works. So, what pissed me off most was that I had spent an awful lot of time ensuring that we were selling like $25 tickets because I wanted younger people to be able to afford to come and see us. And then they were loading those tickets. They were charging more in fees and more in and all this other stuff. So we didn't allow dynamic pricing because it is a scam, and every artist could just say, I don't want that, and it would disappear. But most artists hide behind management, so we didn't know what was going on. The fees side of things, I was saying I want the fees included in the ticket price. I want a $25 ticket to cost $25. And it's yeah, of course you do, yeah. So then when they started rolling out the tickets, and then suddenly like $25, and by the time someone reaches checkout, it's like $57.50. You're thinking like, where the fuck is all this? Where are these fees going? So then I'm on the phone to the bloke who runs Ticketmaster, and he's like, oh Robert, this is like, someone has to upkeep the building and the car. I said, look, if all this is true, and this, why don't you just tell people what the fees are for? Put it on the front of the website. Say, like, you're going to pay $25 for the ticket. That's what the band are charging, and we're going to charge you $27.50 to sweep the car park, and see what happened. So in the end, I managed to wear them down. I managed them, because they really did piss me off because at first they weren't taking me seriously, and it's like, it just drove me crazy. So it takes an awful lot to get me angry, and I did get really, really angry. So then I said, like, you have to start reimbursing people. And they're like, what? And they did. It cost them quite a few $1 million in the end. But I wasn't thinking like, here's me up against Ticketmaster. I was thinking like, I was just pissed off that actually the thing that came out of it, I was pissed off that no one apart from Neil Young had either the inclination or the courage or whatever to stand up and say, yeah, actually this is a fair point that he's making. No one of all the major artists, and they all know what's going on. And anyone that says they don't, they're lying, or they're either fucking stupid or they're lying. It's just driven by greed, but it's the system. It's like you're up against something where everything's monetized. I mean, that's like my lost world. Is like it's a kind of it's seeing the world historically through rose-coloured spectacles to some degree. But there was a time when not everything, the goal to privatisation stuff, we're moving into very sensitive areas, but it's like it's madness. It really is. I mean, that's the reason why the world is kind of falling apart. Is because is greed, inequality, monetisation. It's insane. So in my own small corner of the world, I was like, this won't happen to us. So it's but we're selling T-shirts. How can you sell a T-shirt for $20? Like half of that's profit. I mean, we sold 10 times as much stuff. I'm like reducing the prices all the time, and $15, and we sell 100 times more T-shirts. And I'm saying to people, look, we reduced everything down so that there was barely any profit on any of the stuff we're selling, and we still made so much money. We sold so much stuff. It's like, we just do the same. Everyone's happy. We're happy. We're selling loads of stuff. Loads of people are wearing T-shirts. We're making money off them. Loads of people are wearing T-shirts because loads of people could afford to buy them. It's people save money on the tickets, so they bought merch or they bought beer. I mean, it doesn't really matter what they're spending on. It's like there's goodwill. The shows are fantastic. People, we went and we go back and play the same shows. People are going to come and see us again. It's like, so it's a self-fulfilling good vibe, and I don't understand why more people don't do it. It's either laziness, like I say, or stupidity or greed. It has to be one of those three things. There is no other reason.
Let's do a little bit on each of the songs, just so we know kind of where each of the songs on the record are coming from. So should we start with Alone, if you could give us the title of the song and just...
Yeah, it's tricky talking about the songs individually because I think, as I said before we started, that lyrically I spent a lot of time on them, trying to making them less obtuse than I normally would. I spent more time, to put it the other way, trying to make it very obvious what I was singing about. There's not very much latitude for misinterpretation on the songs on the album. I think Alone, like I said earlier, was I had written most of it, but I was waiting for, like, in the back of my mind I had this line about, and it was an Ernest Dowson poem called Dregs, and it was about we toast with bitter dregs, and I was thinking, like, where is that from? Where have I read that from? And I was outside, and two or three of the songs were all written in the same place, outside. I spend quite a lot of time out wandering around outside in the dark. That is something I do, which is in character. Like, I don't read by candlelight, but I do wander around. I love, I've got a telescope, and I'd love being outside and looking at the sky. And usually there's a fire going, and there was when the fire dies down and the stars blink out and dawn arrives, there is a feeling like, the night's gone. I've always felt that from being young. It's like there's a certain, the sun starts to come up. For most people, it's like, the sun's coming up. For me, it's like, the stars are disappearing. It's not, it's, and it was that I wanted to capture that feeling of feeling very, very solitary. There is a moment when that happens that you suddenly realise it's getting light. You feel incredibly vulnerable and alone, and that was really what the song was trying to just get that feeling of being just born alone and dying alone. It's trite, which is obviously always with a lot of this stuff. A lot of the stuff I'm trying to write, it's a balancing act where you don't kind of tipple over into really, we're all going to die. Surprise me, It's trying to sort of dig into that and getting some kind of emotional connection of what you're really feeling. It's but essentially the songs, doom and gloom is just his fear of death. It's that simple. I mean, everything's fear of death, pretty much. That's greed, fear of death. Love comes into it somewhere. Fuck me, I'm simple, aren't
I? And Nothing Is Forever, if you could name the song.
And Nothing Is Forever. It was about a promise that I made to someone who was very ill, that I would be with them when they died. It's that simple. And I wasn't. And because I wasn't, I wrote the song, which is small compensation for me in my darker moments. But I wasn't able to be with the person for what were good reasons. But it upset me, because you can imagine, it's like you make a promise to someone, it's not good to break promises. So yeah, the song was just an attempt for me to I suppose reconcile myself with something that had happened. There's nothing I can do to change it, so I thought perhaps by memorialising it would somehow make it easier for me to deal with. But
is it?
It was emotional singing it on stage. Yeah, I think the person who the song's about would be happy with the song, I think. So.
A Fragile Thing, once again, if you could name it.
A Fragile Thing is it's the love song, I think, on the album, it's not really a love song in the way that love songs are love song. It's about love, and how love is kind of like the most enduring of emotions. I think it's the most powerful emotion, and it's incredibly resilient, and yet at the same time incredibly fragile. That's paradoxical, I know, and it doesn't really make much sense, but I think you know what I mean. It's like you feel sometimes you're in danger of destroying something, and yet you kind of know that it can't be destroyed. I don't know. I struggled with that song to try and. It was actually originally it was called "Kill the Sun," and it was a very different song, and it was and it mutated into this this song, which is very specific to me, I suppose. But I'm hoping that it resonates with other people because it is a universal theme. Again, so I was trying to keep the album on universal themes. So even though most of the songs are very personal, they're not exclusive. They're not things that only happen to me. So yeah, I mean, Fragile thing. It's the, I suppose within that, it's how you can not live up to the person that you really think you should be. I think that's part that drove me to write the song. A disappointment in myself, I think, was at the heart of it.
Thank you. Very good. Once again, if you could do the title for us, War Song.
War Song was a song. It's a generalised song, I suppose. About how, so it's we're born to war. Again, it's a kind of I sadly, as I've grown older, I've started to believe it more. I was brought up to believe in the best, to believe that people are generally good unless proved otherwise, and it's hard to maintain that through as you grow older because there's so much evidence points in the opposite direction, and it just, you know, how I think the world has kind of spiraled downwards, like I was saying earlier, and it's like that. It's almost like it's always sort of. People was fighting each other for like absolutely nothing. It's so ridiculous, and it just feels like that. You know, you can, you know, at a certain age, males in particular will just like want to fight. It's just because we're monkeys. You know, it's like it's just what we do. But it's weird how it's just become the norm. It's just like you kind of live with it. It's like there's always war going on and stuff. And then on a personal level, it's about someone in particular that I fell out with, who I shouldn't have fallen out with, who over the decades I've kind of fallen out with and made up with, and it's just like, and I think like it's weird because like everyone has those relationships. Well, you can't ever sort of like get rid of the person or really ever want to get rid of them, but you know that you're just going to row with them or just argue about. It's strange, and it's like that's okay. I kind of quite like. I liked it, and the original version of the song was about that, and then I expanded it into the idea. Well, it's like actually what I'm doing with this person is really what everyone like, on a grand scale. Everyone's like, and there's no reason why I'm doing it. It's just, you know, for the same reason that people are like. Are just fighting each other for absolutely like, and that was, you know, and at the end of it, everything's the same. It's like except a few million people are dead. It doesn't make any sense. So it's a bit of a dismal song, war song. Probably, in my mind, the most dismal song on the album. Actually, great guitar solo.
Track 5, Drone No Drone.
Yeah, Drone No Drone was. I think it's a strange song. Again, there were two versions of it. The original version was someone sent a drone over our house, and I was outside, and it really upset me because I was in my pants. But I was like, not just for that reason, but I thought it's like I hate this. You know, this is it was the modern world. Here we go again. It's like, why would you send a drone over like to see what I'm doing outside the back of my house? It's like it really pissed me off. And that this song, but then it mutated into this sort of like a completely sort of like a weird. There is a connection in my own mind, and I kind of like if I read it through, I could say where the connection is. But it ended up being about me coming to terms with my reaction to it. Of how I'm kind of like becoming an old grouch, you know, and it's very easy to tip over into like the fond memories of a world that I think is rapidly disappearing or has already disappeared, which has happened to everyone in history. You know, it's like thankfully I'm not like, music in my day was better. I actually think music in my day was better, but I'm not going to like, you know. I know too many younger people who are coherently arguing that their music is as good, if not better. And I realise that it's what means most to you. It's what good means. But I'm aware that some of my reactions to the modern world are a bit extreme. You know, I'm like, for fuck's sake, I mean, I'm telling you, you know, I don't believe it. I'm in danger of that sometimes, you know. And so, Drone No Drone was really about like me coming to terms with the end of what has been a chaotic life at times, and me thinking, well, like, do I have the drive and the persistence to continue? You know, can I step back out? You know, can I walk out the front door again and continue doing this? And yeah, I mean, I can, and I will, I do. But there are moments that I think, I just really don't want to turn that. Let's leave the front door shut. Let's just go back upstairs. It's fine.
I'll just say, I think there'll be enough in there, but there was a bit of chair creaking.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Don't-
People think it's my prosthetic limbs.
Track 6, I Can Never Say Goodbye. Title and the answer again, please.
Yes, I Can Never Say Goodbye is there was when my older brother Richard died. Obviously, it affected me a lot because he kind of brought me up. He taught me everything really when I was younger. There was an enormous outpouring of emotion, which was like words, music, and just general sort of painting. Even I started. I needed to somehow get what I was feeling out of me. I couldn't stand what I was feeling, and I wrote this song a lot of different ways as well, until I hit on it's a very simple narrative of actually what happened on the night he died. So it went all around the houses. I went everywhere with this song to try and sum up how I felt, and in the end it just turned into like a reasonably bleak little vignette. So I think it's also, I wanted the music on the song. I think the music was more, I wrote the song about it, and the music itself was what I wanted to breathe. So I kind of I was aware of that. So I didn't want the words to dominate the song in the way that sometimes what you can dominate a song. The music just becomes like a backdrop to what you're singing. In this song, I think that the music's more important than what I'm singing in a way. It's kind of, so. Yeah, again, it's a very difficult song to sing live, but great. People say cathartic too much, but it has allowed me to deal with it all, and I feel much more comfortable with it all than I did, and I think it's helped me enormously to.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, thanks.
Track 7, All I Ever Am.
Yeah, All I Ever Am is probably the hardest song in a way to explain, because it's essentially it's about the this is going to sound so, this is private eye stuff. I'm going to think of a way to put this without appearing in that. It's about how you remain yourself, but not in the sense of I don't want to change. It's like it's the persistence of being through time, if you know what I mean. It's like how we so when you look back at yourself and like if you see a photo or something and you think that's me, like, so prior to maybe the last 150 years, when people thought back at themselves, I think they must have thought that their memories must have been first person memories about where they were, what they were doing. And I think with the advent of photography, and that your memories become the third person. You see yourself and then film now. Fuck knows, because if anyone ever watches what they film, I don't know. But your memories are sort of so my memories of me being young are informed by home cine films and pictures in photo albums, and so I don't really engage with and I realise I don't, and I've written a song about it, a song called Lost, which was about the same kind of feeling when I'm thinking that isn't me though, and then it's even not me 5 years ago. I'm thinking how is that me when I did that? It's not a way to absorb yourself of think that wasn't me, although it plays some part in it. Think I can't believe that that really wasn't me. It's that persistence of being, and in fact that of course it's you. That is you. That's who you are now. It's there. It's part of you. It's in there. And it was me trying to understand whether I believe that or not. So the song's kind of it's slightly ambivalent as to whether I do, whether I can genuinely feel me at this moment is all the me's that's ever been, or whether I think that me at this moment is nothing to do with all the me's. I mean, I know in my head that of course I'm the sum of all the parts, but in sometimes I don't believe it. I just cannot accept it. So It's a strange feeling of dissociation from myself, and it was that I was trying to put in the song. And I'm not alone in it, because when I've talked about it with people, like most people seem to have it to some degree. This feeling that somehow I think something's not quite right, whether it be you think you're going to get your life over again, or whether like, there are various ways that you kind of get this sense that things aren't quite as they seem. And it was that sort of uncomfortable feeling that maybe I'm not who I think I am. It's an odd song actually, and took the longest for me to be happy with it. And I'm still not quite sure when I read it, because I've done it in such a way that it's actually quite hard to. It's one of those. This is like War and Peace again. It's like a very, very long sentence. You think like, well, how did it start? It's got like 3 double negatives in it. It's like, what does he mean? So it makes sense to me, kind of.
It's like that. It's a slight tangent, but when I was talking to someone that knows about these things, then we were talking about memory, and I assumed that memory was like a filing cabinet. You bring out the picture and you remember it. You don't. You when you think of something, you re-imagine it every time you think of it. So your memories
and slightly change it.
Are being, not only you're drawing them again every time, but everything that's happened to you and doing to you is changing the way you draw that memory.
Yeah.
So you are changing your own past.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like a feedback loop, because you are the sum of your memories, but at the same time, your memories themselves are being changed by who you are. Yeah, I know. I mean, it's that. It's that, and also it's like the persistence of being. It's like I can't remember the title of the book which set me off down this train of thought. There's a very particular book arguing that we don't persist through time. You know, it was a philosophical. It was rubbish. It was a great book and made me think, but at the end of it, I'm like, it's one of those the arguments I used to have in the band, like and then you always used to have with someone like punching you in the head and say, well, that was real, and most philosophical arguments that I've ever had end up with someone punching me in the head and saying that was real. But
and the song at the end song.
Yeah, end song was, as I said at the beginning, was me looking back at the moon landings and thinking, where did it all go? And that's it. So that's the line in the song. It's like, and bookends with Alone. The themes are the same, and I wanted them to kind of echo each other. And in fact, there is the song that was supposed to end the album after End Song, which much as we did with Disintegration, which ends with Disintegration to all intents and purposes, but then has Homesick and Untitled. And Untitled for me was always the end song on Disintegration. For most people, they think it's Disintegration, but it's Untitled. And I wrote this song called Bodium Sky, and in fact, the lyrics are actually on one of the vinyl versions, I think. And that right up until the end, that was going to be the last song. And then right at the very end, I took it off. And it's a kind of it answers the where's it all gone in End Song, and it was kind of an upbeat. It's just me and an acoustic guitar, so it's a very sort of hippie end. And in the end, that's probably what put me off it, because it seemed a bit self-indulgent. But it's a lovely little song, and it did do something, and it kind of lifted you up after, But that was when the album was much more intense and didn't have no drone in it, and it didn't have I don't think it had All I Ever Am in it either. It was much more low key and much more and this was just like a little spark of light right at the very end, a little twinkle, and I didn't think it needed it. Once I put those 2 songs into the album, I thought, well, actually we don't need this song at the end, so we'll probably redo it as a band and add that on the next one. But End Song, I suppose, the clue's in the title. But it was, it was just me wondering. It kind of carries on from what we were just saying about All I Ever Am, because I was thinking, like, who am I still? I feel the same looking up at the moon as I did when I was 10, but I'm not the same as I was when I was 10, and yet I kind of am. So the moon's pretty much the same.
Not far now, not long to go. This is a question I'm looking forward to asking you. What are your 10 favourite Cure songs, and why, off the top of your head?
Yeah, I mean, there's no such thing as there. It's like my 10 favourite Cure songs. It would change if I answered now. I'll change my mind halfway through. It's I think when I think about what we've done, I suppose if I was to answer the question honestly, and if I picked a song from each album, it would reflect the songs that I would like to have written for this album. So I'm not going to say Love Cats, because it's not really kind of how I feel. But I think that the fact that I wrote Love Cats is great. I'm really, I think, well, that's an unusual song to have written at the age that I was. And it's like, I would pick songs. So I would pick Three Imaginary Boys, the title track of the first album, would be a song I'd be happy with now. It still kind of resonates with me. I think At Night from 17 Seconds, for the same reason we play that a lot live. I think it has the same kind of mood as this album. It would fit quite happily on this album, I think. Faith, the title track from Faith, it's always been a song that I feel, when I wrote that, I can remember thinking, I can write songs. It was actually the first song I was really, really proud of. And there's not much to it, and yet there's something about it which I was just, it was everything I wanted it to be. I could have given up, actually, when I wrote Faith. I thought, that's it. I've proved to myself that I can do it. I think, what on the Pornography album? I'm not sure, actually. If Cold, probably, is because we've been playing that a lot live in the last few years. That would fit on this album, mood-wise and musically. This is going to be difficult for me to remember. The Top album. I think that probably the title track, The Top. I think that would kind of fit. That's a weird song. It's a strange sort of mood. Sinking from the Head and the Door. Again, a bit of doom and gloom, but it's kind of couched in a more sort of, the whole album's a bit more sort of like bright and breezy than this that we've done. If Only Tonight We Could Sleep would be the song from the Kiss Me album, because that's another song we've played live quite a bit over the last few years, and there's a lovely kind of mood to it when it's played well. Disintegration. It would be Untitled, actually, because it's one of my favourite. That is one of my favourite Cure songs. I like that I didn't title it. I know it's really stupid, but I had the courage to not bother thinking of a title. What comes after that? The Wish album, To Wish Impossible Things, actually is one of my favourite. That's another one of my favourite Cure songs. We never play that. I don't know why we don't ever play that, but that would fit happily on or unhappily on this album. Wild Mood. What's Wild Mood Swings next? Oh God, this is difficult. One I'd have to say from Wild Mood Swings. No, Treasure, actually. Treasure would be a great song to fit on this, because that's about loss. That was inspired by Christina Rossetti poems. It's another one that's inspired by someone else's words. Last Day of Summer from Blood Flowers, because we played that quite a lot over the last few years, and that's become a favourite. I was never quite sure about it as a song, but I think it is a good song. Now it gets tricky. The Cure album. Okay, now probably my least favourite album that we've made. So I'm not really. I don't like some of it. It's the only album I don't really think works. Actually, I like Before Three. I think it's a good song. That would probably work. And then 413 Dream. Hungry Ghost, because I think it is a really good song. I think that's it wouldn't fit on this album, but I do like it. I think it's a good song. It's about how people are consumed by wanting more and more and more, including me, and I just think it's a good song. Words and music work really well. I think that's it. I think that's all the Cure albums. God dear me, that's it for me. It's my entire life like flashing before me. I'm going to keel over in a second.
Just a couple more questions. The question was going to be like, what are your sort of favourite songs by other people?
Yeah.
But maybe we could tether it to this album. Are there things that maybe you were listening to, or things that maybe feel like, I can see how
I'm not. Yeah, I can't do another 13 songs by other people like this. Is really beyond me. Songs that spring to mind that would probably inform me as a writer or as a musician, or would be, referring back to Nick Drake again. It would be like Time Has Told Me, which was the song. It was on a sampler. It was on an Island Records sampler called Nice Enough to Eat. I first heard Nick Drake, that song. It stuck with me all my life. It's like his voice, the way he plays, the simplicity of what he does, and yet it's incredibly difficult, impossible to replicate. Like, if you can play anywhere near what Nick Drake can play on the guitar, you're a good guitarist. You're a better than good guitarist. And beautiful words, really simple, the way he delivers them, it's all very heartfelt, very emotional. It connects, and I've always loved him as an artist. Jimi Hendrix informs everything that I've ever done, just because I always wanted to be him when I was a kid. I didn't know anything about him. I didn't know he was black. I didn't know he was American. I didn't really know he was a guitarist. I just thought it was a poster on my brother's wall with Jimi Hendrix. I thought I'd like to be Jimi Hendrix. that would be really good fun. I mean, I was in school being told what to wear, so being Jimi Hendrix was a great option. It's loads of it. Janis Ian. That album, probably Tea and Sympathy, a song like that would be the sort of mood and emotion that I'd be trying to capture on this album. Or Joan Armatrading, Love and Affection. I'm going back to old stuff, so this is my Lost World stuff. Bowie obviously always informs everything I ever do. I always kind of think, what would David do? But yeah, a song like not Young Americans, Life on Mars actually would be. That's a song, a huge impact on me. It's like the way it was, although it's kind of nicked a little bit structurally and stuff, but the way it's put together and the way it's delivered, again, it's perfect. I mean, I could actually go on, buy me a drink, and I could talk all night about songs like that. They're all there. They're all there. The music that you listen to when you're, there's a certain period of everyone's life. I think the music you listen to during that particular period, sort of like around about 13, usually maybe a bit earlier, up to about sort of 17, sometimes a little bit further on. They're the songs that I think that if you turn into a creative person later in life, or even at that point, they're the songs. That's the music that informs you. You can pick other things up along the way. I fell in love with Mogwai and have loved them ever since. And there are lots of other bands as well. But the resonance that you get, the emotional attachment that you have to songs that you hear when you're at that particular, you discover sort of your own music. You discover books for yourself. All those things matter so much more than they should, really, because like rereading, re-listening. I mean, I'm lucky in that the things that I liked when I was young, musically, I still like. I think I was right in my appraisal of most artists and most music. I mean, it sounds big-headed, but I think I was right about most people. I kind of got the sense of who was good and who wasn't. Not so much with literature. I think I stumbled a little bit around some of the books that I thought were great, and I've reread. And I don't think they're that good at all. Again, going right back to the start, I feel like shaking some of the protagonists in the books that I really like some of the Kafka stuff. I like, just get up and leave, It's like, so I think in that way, I realise that I've changed. But that's more to do with just like it's growing older and having agency, which is I think a lot of the stuff that appeals to you when you're at a young age is because you have no power. And you invest that into objects and other and works of art and music and stuff. So, but it does. It has a hold on you that and it never lets go. Which if you've been exposed to and you fall in love with the right things, it's great because you can fall back on them and they're always there. So it's comforting.
Total tangent, just because we're doing something about them. Were you a Talk fan?
I wasn't. I always, see, that's a band. I admire what they did. And I was always aware that what they did was really good, but I never fell in love with them. But it was too late. By then, I was a competitor, I mean, when you start in a band, I mean, whatever anyone says, you are very competitive. You have to be, it's like, you have to believe that you're better than everyone else. Otherwise, you fall by the wayside. There is that sort of horrible determination that you have to have, which most people don't sort of acknowledge, because most people want to be artistic. But you do have to think, they're fucking rubbish. And you even say it and then you think, they're really not. They're probably better than us, but you can't ever say it. Someone showed me yesterday that I'd said about Joy Division, that they're using me, and they're doing that New Order thing, and like New Order, Joy Division thing, and I'm apparently in it saying like, Joy Division pissed all over us, and they supported us at the market, which they did, but like, you probably shouldn't have said it. I mean, had I done nothing in the interviewing period, I would think, why did you say that? Like, you were headlining.
What's the best thing about being Robert Smith right now?
What, apart from this?
Apart from this one.
Being able to, walk into Abbey Road. I have led a very privileged life. I can't believe how lucky I've been I am in all sincerity, I find it astonishing that I've had the life that I've had. And I suppose the fact that I'm still upright is actually the best thing about being me, because there have been points in my life, and I honestly didn't think I'd hit 30, you know, or then 40, and then 50. So it's like, it's nice to still be reasonably, my mind functions not quite as, you know, I don't have the same kind of like acuity that I used to have, but I'm able to enjoy stuff. I'm much more relaxed than I used to be. I think I'm much easier to get on with than I used to be. I know I am, because people smile at me a lot more than they used to. Yeah, it's good. I'm lucky, and I have people around me I enjoy, you know, and I'm able to do something which I always wanted to do, and I'm still able to do it. I mean, that probably is that's the best thing about being me. I'm still doing what I've always wanted to do. So.
That 19-year-old boy in TheCure. Still, here we are. That's
and funny enough, that voice never leaves me. As well. I always it's the yardstick that I still use. It's like, what would I have thought when I was a punk? Still, that informs like the Ticketmaster stuff and everything. It's like, come on, you know, like, I mean, I've said it a few times about going to a Bowie show, and like we've been buying the tickets on the back, like schlepping up to London, and like Nick Costa, I didn't have any money, and he played for like 42 minutes or something. I was like, no, you know, I was right at the back of Earl's Court. I thought, it's taken me like 5 fucking hours to get in this seat, and you've finished, and like there's no encore. It's like, so part of me is like, if you ever do this, don't ever do that, you know. And even though he was my hero, I thought, you know, come on, if you knew how all these people idolise you, and they could, you know, it's not enough. And so I've always probably too much, you know. Maybe why we play too long a lot of the time, but I always feel that voice saying, remember, you know, remember that feeling of it, you know. So it's there, and the decisions that I make are still informed by this sort of like pretty naive 19-year-old voice, which is good. I think it's a good thing. I would hate to feel like I wasn't able to justify myself to that 19-year-old.
I think, yeah, it's interesting that punk part of that punk thing is still.
Yeah, that doesn't leave you, I don't think, either. But that's not really about the punk, you know. It's either you're either like that or you're not. It's a thing. It's a character thing. Yeah.
It's been good to speak to you.
That's been very interesting. Thank you very much. I feel almost socialised at the end of it.
That's all our questions. I don't know if there's anything.
That's it.
I don't
That's
think
it.
if there's anything we've covered.
Everything.